3 to 103. What are you going to say, huh? Joel Embiid, I mean, how good was he, right? Dictating the game right off the get-go. 16 points in the first quarter. I mean, what are you going to do? 123 to 103. That's back-to-back bad games for Sacramento. Fox did not shoot the ball well, but that's not why they lost. They lost because they had no answer for Joel Embiid. I mean, he got the whole freaking team in foul trouble before we even got going. So welcome to the post-game show. We're going to be joined by Ryan and Sacktown in just a moment. Again, the box score is not a good one. 41% shooting for the Kings, 51% for the Philadelphia 76ers, 123 to 103 the final. I will bring Ryan in. Ryan, you're going to have to bring yourself in here as my cursor is currently stuck. So there you go. How are you, buddy? What are you going to say? Men against boys, Joel Embiid. What are you going to say? The Kings had absolutely no answer. He got the whole front line in foul trouble before the first quarter was over.
Dominant. Nothing else you can say. Men amongst boys. Embiid just took over the game right when the game started, and it was pretty much done from there.
All right. So, again, the Kings give up 39 in the first quarter, 41 in the second quarter. That's 80 points, Ryan. 80 points that Philadelphia had at the halftime. This game was over early. Really, the Kings were never – I mean, other than the first 6, 7, 8 minutes, the Kings were never in this game. They were never in this game.
No, they weren't. And think about how many free throws Embiid shot in the first quarter as well. Yeah. I mean, they were getting points when the clock stopped. So the Kings just could not get it going. Offense just looked a step slow. 2 rough games in a row, like you said, Grant.
Yeah, no pressure on you, but if you want to handle the chat line, it's up to you. If not, as I said, my cursor is stuck, so I'm not able to navigate around our webpage. 123 to 103. Let me show you the box here, or at least let me talk about the box, all right? For Sacramento, Sabonis had 22 points. He was in early foul trouble, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Barnes with 11 points. Keegan Murray did nothing in this game, absolutely nothing. 21 minutes, made 1 basket. He only had 2 rebounds. Fox was not good, 5 of 15 floor, 1 of 7 from downtown. And, you look at the bench, Malik Monk, 1 of 5 from 3. And what else are you going to do? 31 points for Embiid, 21 for Harden. The Philadelphia 76ers absolutely coasted in this game. The Kings did outscore Philly 28-21 in the third, but really the game was over at the end of the first quarter. The game was certainly over at halftime, and then the final of 123 to 103. So Sacramento is now 6-7 on the road, Ryan, 14-11 overall, and they got a game in Toronto tomorrow.
Yeah, on a back-to-back. So you got to get right really, really quick at this point. One bright spot, I think, for the Kings tonight was Sabonis. He played his tail off.
Yep.
The Kings guards, I don't know if anybody noticed in the second quarter, they missed him 3 or 4 times on rolls where there was a window to get him the ball. But, another Sabonis solid stat line going against Embiid. Somebody that is much bigger than him and much more skilled.
Yeah, no one really played a lot of minutes tonight, so, fatigue shouldn't be an issue. Sabonis had 30 minutes. Fox had 29. What was your impression of De'Aaron Fox moving tonight?
I thought Fox was moving well on the back pedal and side to side, but going forward, that tells me that I would speculate it's something near the front of his foot, the big toe kind of area, because he just does not have that explosion to the hoop, and you can tell he's a little bit hesitant to go to the hoop. He only took it a couple times.
Yeah. Again, he did not shoot the ball well at all. 1 of 7 from distance and 2 of 4 from the foul line. Really, when you look at the free throws, Joel Embiid, he got to the line, 8 times in the first quarter, for crying out loud? I mean, he was 11 of 13 from the line, 31 points. I guess the question is, when you look at Joel Embiid, when he's playing this way, there are very few teams that can match up with him, There are very few teams that can match up with them. And here's the other deal, Ryan. When Philadelphia is healthy, when they have PJ Tucker, when they have Embiid, when they have Harden, I mean, they're not a bad team. They're not my pick to come out of the East, but they're not a bad team.
Yeah, no, they're not. I mean, it all comes down to staying healthy, as the person says before. He's talking about the Kings. But yeah, the Sixers, when Embiid's got the three ball going, he's got the inside game going, you got
Yep.
Harden going. What are you going to do? And then you always have PJ Tucker just sitting in the corner waiting for the ball. So we'll see where they come out. And, you know, the East is not as log jammed as the West, but they're a scary team.
Says the Kings are a B- team right now, basically just above average. I'd put them a little bit better than just above average. I think you're being a little harsh, but it's not a one-game season. It's not a two-game season. I keep on saying this. It's an 82-game season, and you're going to go through really good stretches, and you're going to go through really bad stretches. I mean, if it weren't for the 19-0 run in the fourth quarter, we'd be looking at an 0-for road trip right now. So the best we can think of right now, Ryan, is 500 with wins tomorrow at Toronto and Detroit. It's not a disaster. You're 14-11, but you know, you certainly don't want to slide in this Western Conference. We keep on talking about that.
Yeah, Grant, exactly. I mean, it is. I mean, we said 3-3 at the beginning of the road trip, right?
Yep.
That's what we would take, not
Still,
how we want to take it with two bad games in a row like this. But, you know, you always worry about that getaway game, but they can't worry about that right now. They got to worry about Toronto and get right. And also, Grant, to switch tunes really quick, talking about Fox and injuries, you've talked about this all season. You said, what are the Kings going to do when they are not healthy or they do not, or they have a star out? And you're getting a taste of that right now.
Great point. Here's the other issue. The Kings started the night in 5th place in the West. Now they're 7th. All right. So they fall all the way to what would technically be the play-in at 14-12. I know that's silly to talk about in the middle of December, but I'm just trying to illustrate what happens when you lose a game in the Western Conference. And if they lose tomorrow, they might find themselves falling all the way to 9. Now, the Warriors are going to lose tonight. They're getting blown out in the 4th at Milwaukee, 102-82. So that would put Golden State at 14-14. All right. And then you have another game to keep an eye on. The first place, New Orleans Pelicans. How weird does that sound? They're at Utah, and it's 28-24. So we don't know the outcome of that game. You know, if the Jazz lose, they're 500. If the Jazz win, they're 16-14. So a long way to go in that game. Houston is up big on Phoenix, 68-50. You know, Houston's last place in the West, but they've got some big wins already this year. So those are some of the games. 123, though, to 103. Philadelphia, the victor over the Sacramento Kings. And next up, Toronto. Toronto, by the way, did not play tonight. They're 13-14, but they're very good on their home floor, Ryan, at 10-3 on their home floor.
Yes, they are. They are very good. And, you know, they don't get much of a home crowd advantage. They just play well. They're more relaxed, and they caught the Kings tonight, and there's not much more you can say about it. I mean, the Kings, I don't know to you, Grant, they looked out of sorts. The whole start to the game, Embiid, turnovers in the second quarter, and you blame that on the rotations to a degree, right? Because you have guys in and out because they basically fouled out the front line in the first half.
Very true. But what have we been talking about? That's the strength of this Kings team, Ryan. We've been talking about the depth, right? So, you know, we got to be careful. You can't have it both ways. If you're going to say the depth and the bench is one of the reasons for the Kings' success this season, well, here's a game tonight where you needed their depth, all right? You needed the bench. And, you know, you got to, again, Malik Monk only 1 of 5 from downtown. But he was 4 of 10. You had Davis contributing off the bench with 12 points. But as a game, here's the numbers that you're not going to win with. On the road, 41% from the floor and only 10 of 42 from downtown. And quite frankly, I understand you're trailing, and I understand you need to get back in the game. 42 three-pointers to me is too much. 10 of 42 for 23% is not going to cut it.
No, and the counter argument can be made that shooters need to shoot, right? And that's kind of their bread and butter. But, you know, once you get to a certain point in the game, you got to take the ball to the hoop. You got to get physical. You got to see the ball go through the net, right, Grant? And, you know, it's almost like waving the white flag. So I would have liked to see them get something going. Harrison Barnes was actually really good tonight in terms of taking the ball to the rack. He's been really good the past couple weeks. But going back to the bench, where's Davion Mitchell? He has been struggling very much as of late, and I believe he was 0 for 7 tonight, Grant.
It's terrible. Davion Mitchell's numbers tonight, he was 1 of 8 for 2
he got
points.
1 at the end.
Yeah, 1 of 8. And, you know, he's offensively we haven't seen him this year for the most part. And when he started for De'Aaron at Cleveland and at the Knicks, again, he's very limited offensively. So it's going to be interesting as we get closer now to the new year and trades, whether Monte McNair tries to really beef up that area with some offense when De'Aaron Fox is not on the floor.
Sure, that's a great point. You got to have somebody to play with Monk back there. Him and Monk and Terrence Davis can somewhat play together, but that could be a place they're going to look, and they're going to look down low too. There's been a lot of talk about that. They need to get another big. Sabonis, you need to have Sabonis on the floor. If you could have him on the floor for all 48 minutes, things would be okay for this team, but that's not realistic.
123 to 103. I want to thank one of our sponsors. Of course, they have been with me from day one. That is New Works Plumbing of Sacramento, locally owned for over 20 years. New Works has a fix for you. Call the number on your screen or just go to sacserviceplumbing.com. And remember, if you have an emergency in the middle of the night, no problem. New Works will be there with their 24/7 service. Again, just go to sacserviceplumbing.com. Grant Napier, Ryan and Sacktown, 123 to 103, the final score. We appreciate those of you that are with us on the stream. I would think that a good percentage of the audience wasn't around to watch the fourth quarter of this game because this game was over. Really, the game was over at halftime. I'm sure a lot of people said, I'm done. I'll catch you tomorrow in Toronto,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a toss-up, Grant, where people fall in terms of whether you want the starters to get the rest and not risk injury, or if you want them to get some flow. I mean, look at how Keegan Murray started to get going. He got run late in games. So, not much to see at the end, but the Kings need to get right. And, this has not been a great road trip so far.
No, it has not. And again, I'm only saying if they lose tomorrow, then it's a bad road trip, regardless of what happens in Detroit. Ryan, what we thought was if you can split the first two games against Milwaukee and at Cleveland, who had only had one home loss, you're in great shape. And they did that. And now they're in jeopardy of losing 3 games in a row. And again, I'm not saying they're going to lose tomorrow, but if they do, even if you win against Detroit, that's not a good road trip. That's not a productive road trip. Now, the good news is, Ryan, you built up a 4-game over 4. Good thing I don't have to talk for a living. You built up your record to you were 4 games over 500 when you hit the road. So you had a little play with. But again, I keep on going back to the West, Ryan. Each loss is significant. Again, look at the standings. The Kings dropped 2 spots just with 1 loss, and they're now 7th. So, you really can't afford to stumble. And again, we keep on talking about this. For the most part, Fox has missed 3 games, but this team has been very healthy. And we know at some point that is going to change. And then what happens?
Yeah, well, we're getting a taste of it, Grant.
Yeah.
And I look at it as a positive that the West is this jammed just because every game should matter just a little bit more when you can drop that many spots.
Yeah.
Depending on one game's outcome this early in the season. So it's got to be a reminder to the team to bring it every night. And I'm not so concerned about 2 road losses. I'm not concerned about the way they lost in these 2 games.
Well, I think the Knicks game on Sunday was arguably their worst game of the year. Now, you can always use an excuse, well, you didn't have Fox. Okay, you didn't have that excuse tonight. And, Philadelphia is a 500 team. Now, I know they were without Harden for a while, but it's not like they've been, blowing the doors off teams. But they have maybe the MVP of the league in Joel Embiid. And Sacramento had absolutely zero answer for him. You made a funny point on the Listen App show that it was almost like, your youth basketball team where you go and you look at the other team and you're like, wow, look at the size of that guy. He's just like so much bigger than everyone else on your team. And that's what you're right. That was a good point. That's what it looked like in the first quarter tonight.
Yeah, it looks like a men amongst boys. It looked like an 8th grade basketball game where the center looked like he's old enough to drive the bus to the game. So they didn't have an answer. And, Sabonis, he's a strong guy for his size. And, I mean, they just were getting pushed around no matter who went on Embiid. I mean, that's greatness when you can be down low and you can play the way he can play, being doubled, cutting to the lane, and to be able to shoot the 3 ball. I mean, he is the MVP of the league if he plays like this every night. There's no question about it.
I agree with you. I totally agree. 108-87, Milwaukee now leading Golden State. So they're going to win over the Warriors. So that's good news for Sacramento. Houston in the third with 4 minutes left leads Phoenix 72-55. And New Orleans and Utah locked up in a close game. 2 minutes gone by in the second quarter. It is 34-31. The Celtics and the Lakers, Boston finding out that coming out west is not always the easiest thing in the world. They are now 21-7. They lost to the Warriors. They lost to the Clippers. And tonight they're taking on the 11-15 LA Lakers. Kings again, 3-ball tonight, just 10 of 42 for 23%. Free throws, not a problem, 17 of 20. But you look at the numbers, Joel Embiid was toying with the Kings whenever he wanted. 2-4 would not be great. I'm sorry. 2-4 would be okay. 2-4 would not be great. Kings aren't that good on the road, better at home. Disagree with you. 2-4 is not great. All right. 2-4 is so. It's not good. When you're 14-10, when you leave and you're 4 games over 500 and you go 2-4 on a trip. And by the way, they haven't gone 2-4 on this trip. So I'm going based on your message. That's not great. No, it's not great. So again, you can't do anything about this game. You are now on your way to Toronto, where they are really good at home. And it's 123-103 the final. And the Kings need to get back in their rhythm. Think about this, Ryan. You didn't score 100 points Sunday in New York. And this team, which is regarded as one of the best offensive teams in basketball, both with your eyes and with the statistics, only scored 103 again tonight on the road in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and it's shooting woes, Grant. Shooting woes and turnovers at this point.
Yeah.
You got Kevin Huerter not shooting the ball well.
Nope.
The bench not shooting the ball very well. And when you have that combination, those are the two big things this team's relied on all year, because it certainly hasn't been consistent defense. So they've got to find a way to get it going. And I think it's more motion. It's getting the getting the ball in everyone's hands and getting back to the way that, we've seen them play earlier in the season.
I saw Lydia's chat message, and yeah, you're right about Toronto. That is not going to be a picnic, Lydia. You're absolutely right. And the Kings, if they could go and win the next 2 games, then they're going to feel really good about this trip, based on how they looked in New York. And again, tonight, if they can win their next 2 games, they're going to be feeling really good going back home. But I'll tell you, it would be disaster is too strong of a word. But if you lose both these games, that's really a bad trip. That goes from, it's not a disaster because you had a 4-game over 500 record when you left town. But we also have to look at worst case scenario. If you lose both the games tomorrow and to Detroit, and by the way, Detroit gave Sacramento all they could handle when they were in Sacramento recently. They had the worst record in the Eastern Conference. Cade Cunningham, by the way, is having surgery on his shin. He's out for the year, but he didn't play in Sacramento the last time. So first things first, Toronto, Kings got tore up with a very physical team. They'll be lucky to make it to the playoffs. Trust me, I know the Kings. You know what? This is the guy I don't want on. So if you ever see his James Dean, don't even let him come on. All right. So get his message off the screen, please. Thank you very much. All right. 123-103, the final. And James, no more. We're not putting you on anymore. This is the last time you'll be on. Ryan, take him off.
Yeah, I'm trying right now. Grant.
Yeah, get him off. All right. So let's say the Kings lose tomorrow. Let's have some fun and let's say they lose. All of a sudden, that Detroit game becomes really, really big game because confidence-wise, if you were to go 1-5 on this trip, that's awful. I mean, no one thought that the Kings would go 1-5 on this trip. You and I, we thought they could go 4-2. We thought, okay, you'll take 3-3, but not worse than 3-3. You could be staring at that if you go to Toronto tomorrow and lose.
Yeah, you absolutely could. I mean, it's kind of that red button for the road trip if you go 1-5, especially against Detroit, who, they have bigs. They have Bagley, who's been playing decent. But they need to retool, Grant, and I don't know what that's going to be, but it needs to happen soon, and it needs to happen within the next 24 hours because, again, I am more concerned about the way they are playing rather than losses. If these were close games and the other team was shooting 62% from 3, you got beat by a better team, but they're not getting beat by better teams every game this trip. I mean, tonight they were, but That's the problem. I think that's the cause for concern for Kings fans.
Hey, we're also brought to you in part by Foster's and Paws. They are passionate about what they do, and they are animal advocates, and they work hard to save lives. And, they primarily focus on those vulnerable dogs in shelters, and they pull a lot of pregnant moms, nursing moms, bottle puppies, dogs with medical needs, and dogs in danger of being euthanized. They're looking for adopters, donors, and fosters. To learn more, just go to the website on your screen, fostersandpaws.org/adopt. 123-103, the final score tonight. And again, go up to Toronto and see what happens against the Raptors team that, statistically, the Kings have a better record, but again, on their home floor, very good at 10-3. And I think tomorrow's a really big game, Ryan, because you do not want to be pulling into Motown for a game against a last place team. And what do we say, Ryan, about the Kings? You have said it. I have said it.
Down to their opponent's level.
That's correct. And guess what Detroit is? Detroit's the worst team record-wise in the East. And that's not just a way you want to end your road trip, going in there thinking, okay, wait a minute, we're 1-4, and this all of a sudden is a really big game. Let's see if the Kings can get back on track tomorrow against the Raptors.
Yeah, let's hope so, because I don't think the fan base is going to be feeling well either if they're headed in there 1-4 on the road trip. And you don't want to give Detroit any, chance or, reason to believe they could beat this team. So let's see if they get back on track tomorrow. But, it's not a must-win, Grant, but it's, to start feeling a little bit better about this team and feeling better about this trip, it's got to be a win. And even a decisive win at that point.
Absolutely. All right. That's no reason to really go on too long tonight. I think everyone is tired of talking about this ugly game. I'll let you end the stream when I'm done. 123-103. Rana, we'll do this again tomorrow right after the Raptors game. We'll see if we got some better news, buddy.
Sounds good, Grant. Have a great one.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget, tomorrow, right here at 3:00 Pacific, Jerry Reynolds, he'll be on with me, and then we'll do the post-game show after the Kings and the Raptors. So long, everybody. Thanks very much. Make it a good evening. Bye-bye.